Hello and welcome to citiesabc.com series of interviews and profiles with the global top thought leaders, experts, and people shaping and creating new narratives for our world, society, and business and industries. My name is Dinis Guarda, and I'm here to talk about the biggest problems humanity is facing, questions, and challenge how we can think bigger and out of the box. Cities ABC is a new wiki for AR, intelligent smart cities, tech, digital platform for reinventing and uniting cities, universities, and all of us citizens. Today, I have with me someone that actually I deeply admire for the work and as well for the impact he's doing in the world. Jaewon Peter Chun, that is the Chief Executive Officer of ARK-i Labs, President of World Smart Cities Forum, CEO of XnTREE, and as well executive director of the Korea-Israel Chamber of Commerce, and as well a partner of Apex Investment Company. So welcome to our interview series, Jaewon Peter. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for having me here.
Okay, so you have a fantastic profile that goes from investment to technology, policy making, and a lot of other areas. So I would like to start by the basis. Okay, so everyone that arrives to a massive career like yours and as well a dynamic in a lot of different areas has a background. So could you tell us a bit about your background, South Korea to a global citizen right now between New York to London and as well South Korea and most of Asia? And how did you came to where we are right now? Because I think it's important for our audience as well to your profile to know about you.
Well, I was born in South Korea, of course. Um, I just like to spend my early life in South Korea, and then I went to study abroad to the United States and back in 1990s. And my first job was actually investment banking in Wall Street in New York City, where I actually got involved myself in investment in the tech companies, which is actually was venture companies around the world. So my job was dealing with the high potential companies around the world, including the United States, enlisted in NASDAQ back in 1990s. It's late 1990s and early 2000s. And I spent few years in South Korea back again because of my parents there. And I founded my companies, like consulting companies in South Korea, and dealing with some strategic consulting jobs for the large businesses and also the governments. And then I just had a chance to invest in some companies and ongoing jobs with my former colleagues together and interested in more investing in innovations around the world. And so started with Israel. So I visited Israel so many times and to trying to find out the better high potential companies out there. So I joined the Level 39, which is the Europe's largest open tech cluster, based in Canary Wharf in East London, and where we nurtured more than 300 startups there to be unicorns. And in the meantime, the first project regarding the small city was a Cognicity project, which was driven by Canary Wharf Group, the owner of Canary Wharf area. And then I involved some of the small city projects around the world since then. And I think between 2016 and up to now, I'm actually managed more than 10 different small city projects around the world, including South Korea National Small City Pilot Projects, which is about $3 billion budget. And currently I'm engaged myself in Vietnamese Hanoi Small City Pilot Projects, which is also the more than $2 billion at the moment. And unfortunately, I know the COVID-19 hit everywhere. I stuck in New York City, but still we are working together and communicating with the city government and state government and to make the city much better. Maybe post-COVID-19 will bring the New York City something way different. Same with the London City as well. So we are trying to create some TechSandbox model and inside of London City, together with the London City government. So these are the major projects ongoing right now.
Oh, that's quite impressive to say less. So it's a solid and as well fantastic achievement. So before we go to your present projects, a couple of questions related with your background. So you start in investment bank and you start initially investing in tech, and then of course you were involved with Level 49. Could you tell us about this background? Because I think it's particularly interesting to have someone like you looking from the technology angle, from the fintech, that is especially Level 49 was, you work a lot in policies with UK government as well, and as well the work that you've been doing with South Korea government, and how do you put this to connect right now with the strategy for smart cities? Because smart cities are probably the epicenter of all these technologies. You have to have investment, technology, and policy making, and we need this more than ever. So if you could tell us a bit about this background, because I think it's particularly important.
Well, my background is finance, of course, because I used to work in the investment bank. But the thing is, in my humble opinion, the technologies and the finance cannot be different. It should be like really correlated. So the reason why I was more into technology and innovation side, because I witnessed some big companies. I mean, it was very small companies back in the 1990s. They become growing and growing. For example, Google was one of the cases. And Sony Ericsson was that time that I was in my office. I just saw people, CEOs and CFOs, CTOs actually coming into our office and to have the interviews and also the discussing the seed stage investment and the Series A through B type of the investment we're just talking about. So some of the investment actually brought the world that well-known companies like Google's and the Tesla, these guys. So I think the investing in the innovation in the early stage can be bringing lots of the impacts on the communities around the world. So that I just like brought the concept of the smart city should be combined with innovation and technology and solutions. But a lot of people misunderstand that smart city is nothing but technologies. But I think the technology and solutions and innovation can be one of the side dishes. I think the main dishes in the smart city is actually the people, and because the people can integrate themselves into the city, and they actually make the better picture what the city should be changed and what the city should go with the people. So I think the people heads up with their innovation based on the infrastructure of the city, and city can be changed a better way or maybe a different way. So we are talking about small cities around the world. It cannot be the same. Just like here in New York City, we see that a lot of problems here. Maybe a lot of people maybe understand that New York City has enough infrastructures and everything, but if you're taking a subway here, you still have lots of problems. And even we're not talking about the price, I mean the fare, but we're talking about the services and also the environment, a better environment and healthier environment, and using the public transportation systems. And let's talk about maybe Kolkata, India. Actually, about 3 years ago, Indian government invited me a couple of times and regarding the smart city initiatives, because Modi government in India, they made an announcement of 100 smart city projects, and still probably going. But I was there to advise them. But one of the cities I visited in India was Kolkata. I think the most important thing for Kolkata is the building of the better sewage systems and also the waste management systems. I think some of the cities, they really require something right now. And that is the kind of major prioritized themes for the building of the better smart cities. So what I've seen the cities and technologies and people, that's my job to combine them in the much better way from the macro perspectives, also micro perspectives, and mingled together with the smart city philosophy into also the other aspects.
So one of the things I want to touch in particular, being you from South Korea and as well, I've been working with the South Korean government in terms of defining a smart city strategy for the country. I would like to hear about that experience, because South Korea is probably one of the countries that is more innovative in the world, and this to say less. But at the same time, is a country that's been growing at the path of sustainability and incorporation. And actually, in the last years, I've been doing some research. There's a lot of new smart cities that have been emerging in South Korea from the scratch, some of them with fantastic results. So could us a bit experience on that? And I'm sure you have some interesting insights on that.
Well, actually, one of the books that I'm actually still writing about is the ongoing definition of smart cities around the world. I think maybe Asian smart cities is something way different from the smart city initiatives from the Netherlands or the UK, or even the Northern European countries. Asian is much more like new city development. South Korea has been developed in a very short period of time. I mean, 30, 40 years. So because after the Korean War, everything's gone, and the only thing they have to make the regenerate everything from the scratch was actually the building of the infrastructure and the building of the houses and commercial buildings and roads and everything. So still, I think maybe if you think about here in New York City, the population of metropolitan areas is 22 million people. And Seoul metropolitan is about 25 million. So really dense population area. The thing is, around the Seoul city, there are like more than 10 different satellite cities, which was designed as kind of the ubiquitous city. Ubiquitous city was actually initiated about 20 years ago from South Korean government, which is combination between the construction and also the telecommunication systems. So there was a kind of concept of the ICT. I think that was the key back then. But the problem for Korean smart city is still government-driven projects. There was nothing about PPP model. So public-private partnership is the key to support the city, because city should have the sustainable goals inside. It should be, of course, the resilient and everything. But economically and culturally, they have to be sustainable and long-term sustainable. So that's why UN initiated the SDGs also. I think, even though this is a requirement, many cities in South Korea, besides the metropolitan city like Seoul, is not really sustainable. So that's why South Korean government, about 3 years ago, they trying to test the couple of cities around inside of South Korea, and they chose 2 cities as a national pilot projects, which were Sejong City, which is the capital city, new capital city, South Korea, and Busan City, which is the largest port, and I think maybe third largest port in Asia. I was in charge of the Busan, so basically it has a water, and also the most of the industries in Busan was logistics and the shipping and kind of shipping yards, and the small medium enterprises manufacturing systems there. But right now it's almost gone. The people trying to get out of the city because it's really hard to get a job there, because it's kind of the conventional industry. So my theme in Busan as a national pilot project was trying to change something, very different ways. Number one is, the most of the thing that I was really focused on was to make the city of Busan to be much more, kind of the hub of the digital transformation. Because the old industries never had, make the people satisfied with the job creations there. So the digital transformation and targeting on the existing younger generations, and even though old generation, they can actually just tap into themselves into growing themselves based on the city. So innovation tech hub inside of Busan is sort of the designated area. To define that area is kind of the hub of South Korean Silicon Valley with the digital economy and digital industries. So we're trying to leverage this area to be a kind of process, ongoing process, and to transform the conventional industry into the future industry. So that was actually the thing that I was really focusing on. And so I just brought the two concepts, living like concept of this small city, but I just changed the name. It's called the TechSandbox, Small City TechSandbox into the city. So some of the companies come into the city, they can bring their ideas and solutions, and we let them compete in a period of time, in 1-2 years. And then we choose the best cases, and we just bring their idea solutions into the city. So they actually have the government grants, as well as also we bring the old investors in the city and to scale them up in some specific level. And those combinations, like system integrated systems inside of a small city, can be also recommended or introduced into other small cities. So, but you probably need to understand that the small city doesn't mean anything about entire city, because it's really difficult and really highly difficult. So we have to choose one specific area into the city. For example, here in New York or maybe London, let's talk about London. And London is, so large. So you cannot, it's gonna take a little time to where to start. So you can actually start with the dense population area, or maybe you can start with, poor area in the city. So once you just choose the designated area to start with, then that will be something different. Just like Old Station area, that was actually initial stage of London Tech City initiatives back in 2011. So that is one of the cases. We start from some area and to expand more and more and more. And I think, so the Busan Small City was a kind of key pilot area to, give a lot of impressions to other adjacent cities to collaborate. And also they're trying to, produce the large scale of the industries and also the economic scalabilities. So I just also brought the concept of the collaborative small city clusters. So because one area of city cannot do everything, right? Even the startups or tech companies coming in there, it's not a market, it's very small. It's a tiny market. If we need to think about, we need to give them some sort of the direction to grow, some way, then we have to just combine other small city projects. So it's an international, cross-validation tech sandboxes was really required. So I brought the concept into the National Smart City Pilot Project Master Plan. So I introduced some of the cities in Western European countries and also the North American countries. and with the other ongoing smart city projects inside of Asia. So those collectively about 30 smart city projects could be another space for the markets. And because we're talking about trades like import and export, if we just, that's the kind of trade, right? So that has the regulation and everything. But digital transformation, we're talking about the selling the one software, applications. There's no hurdles to sell your intellectual property to something. So I think probably maybe future in the industry and with the digital transformation will change everything, just like during a pandemic right now. So you never anticipated this kind of, the speed of the digital transformation. It was so fast. So now you just witness everything is really fast these days. And also another issue is regulation systems. Asian smart city project has a lot of problems because we're talking about the digital transformation, we're talking about sensors, we're talking about data, we're talking about, mobilities like autonomous mobility kind of systems, right? So most of the countries in Asia, they have regulated this kind of stuff. And so I think unlike the UK or maybe some states in the United States, most of the regulation system in Asia is positive regulations. So everything is like written in the law. So you're not allowed to do something with new things. You have to report everything, and it's going to take a long time. And bureaucracy is a big hurdle for them as well, because the speed is the key, velocity is the key to do something with a small city and also the technologies and digitalizations. But this systems actually is a big enemy for them as well. So that's why we just came up with an idea as a TechSandbox is kind of the protective vehicles, so that every innovative companies, they can try anything they want. So the system of the TechSandbox, defend them from whatever they do. So ideally, we invite more than 200 companies with a population about 100,000 people coming into the city. There will be the kind of, they are in the middle of the test and everything on small cities. So they're participating and sharing their own data, and they're also participating in every activities that we are just doing based on the smart city projects. So that was the actually major thing that I was working on as with the master plan of Busan Smart City projects 2 years ago. And I upgraded that kind of concept into Vietnam now. So even though Vietnam is, well, communism countries, right? So, but it's way different from China. So I think Vietnam has kind of biggest goals, what they have to do. So I try to just convince them to have a quantum jump from the economy in Vietnam right now into the maybe 5 years later. Just like the Chinese 2G telecommunication standard, they actually skip the 3G. Instead of it, they actually jump into 4G. And then the biggest beneficiary during this kind of big change in China was Alibaba and also Alipay, because only 6-7% of the whole population in China, they had credit cards and debit cards. And more than 90% of the population, they transact everything, like they buy some stuff, they just use cash. And this kind of, the digital transformation was the kind of biggest challenges, but as well as big opportunities for Chinese people. Chinese consumers. So they don't use cash too much. They transact everything in mobile payments. The same thing, I'm seeing that not exact, but there is similarities between Vietnam and China, but I think that the Vietnam case is a little bit different from China. So the Vietnamese ecosystem based on smart city can be a biggest impact some adjacent nations around the Vietnam, because the ASEAN nations with 9 countries around the area is almost the same population of the European countries. So scalability and the sustainability and also the urban regeneration kind of things. And we can see that a lot of opportunities in Vietnam. Even 100 million population in Vietnam, you see that more than 70% is younger than, I think, 40 years old. So it's still a young country. And they are fast and adopting the digital solutions and services as well. So I've been seeing that a lot of young people in the streets in Vietnam, they use Instagram and Facebook much more than other young generations in other countries do. So I think probably maybe in the near future, they will be probably leading this kind of digital economy. So these kind of digital economy can be another the method and to collect and use the better way with their own data.
And this is I want to touch one thing, and this is fantastic examples, and I subscribe almost everything. But one thing that I would like to come back to, the definition of smart cities, and I think this is particularly important because you touch a very important thing. That when we talk about smart cities, there's this concept of putting an intelligent city that can actually have data to improve everything, to create a smarter society and a smarter organization. But then there's reality. And the reality is that there's the regulators, there's different considerations in terms of even velocities of the city, legacy systems, and as well making even people agree and a lot of different things. So can you just come back and as well as a world leading expert in smart cities, what would be your summary of smart cities now that you have as well, not only the concept and the theory, but the practice? And I think that's very important for the people listening to us.
Well, actually, before I just define, because I hate to define the small cities, because, a lot of people maybe notice that the concept, the meaning of small city is now becoming general now, right? So maybe it depends on where you live, where you educated, and where you have your own jobs. I think the definition of small city, it depends on the background of the cities and everywhere. But the most common thing that we have to think about regarding a small city is people. I think the most important component of small city to begin with is people, because somebody needs to live there, right? So what kind of people we have to see and what kind of people live there, that is the kind of very important components as well. And also, the people as kind of living animal. I mean, they have to do something. I mean, they have to participate, and they love to participate in a lot of activities. And the outcome is activities in a way of the business activities or cultural activities and many different types of activities. And these are also the cradle of the data. So I think the city in the future, they have to really think about how to embrace data, how to just specify the data, because until now, many countries, they are really sensitive in dealing with the data, even though they have a huge amount of data in their stock, in their warehouse, but those are almost junk because there's only data, right? So data can be really efficient when someone or some organization or maybe the people can utilize those data in a better way, right? So the kind of the ecosystem of data analytics and data mining and data sharing, I think maybe that's the biggest thing that you can see, from outside into small city. Wow, this is small city using the data in this way. That's amazing. Also, I think maybe easiest way to explain this kind of thing. Let's talk about the COVID-19. We have two different type of the thinking difference. I think maybe a Western European people, they might think about South Koreans track of, the patients, for example, like if some people get coronavirus and they're trying to just track them out, right? By digital, I mean, throughout the applications embedded in your mobile phone and smartphones. And that will be maybe different thinking from the Western countries. They might think about this is actually intrusion of privacy. But some Asian countries, they have to think about it. This is actually a mandatory thing because I don't want to get caught by the coronavirus throughout other people who I don't know well. So it's kind of the controversy issues. We're just talking about COVID-19 these days. But smart city is kind of platform that maybe deal with this kind of ongoing controversies as well. And because, for example, one of the things that I'm actually working on in London and New York right now, even though we actually just right before this discussion in fully, we are thinking about building up some sort of the antivirus walking through gates in the major streets. And because if you're actually trying to track them down by the surveillance camera, CCTVs in the corner of the street, that would be something scary. So you don't want that, right? So if you actually just confirm yourself, you just, just approve yourself that I'm sharing my data. I'll be fine to be, filmed by the CCTV everywhere. But still, I don't think that many people would love to do that. But the open gate thing is somebody wants to actually go through the gate and you're sharing your data. And also it's also communicated with the local clinical centers and local hospitals that whether you are sick or not. So that's the kind of the basic communication channels, sharing the individual data. But they have to confirm it before they just come to the gate. So I think this kind of initiatives is also be another track record that smart city can be sustainable using the individual data. So I think it's still like the stakeholders of a smart city needs to the fight or maybe sharing their different ideas. I think one of the process, this kind of activity should be applied to small cities as well. So in a nutshell, I don't really define the smart city definition, but the basic definition of smart city is the city should be evolved based on the people's activities and collaboration. And I think the technology solutions ideas can support these activities. So eventually this city can be really healthier based on its insights and economy. So
that's a very good point, and it opens a lot of things. I don't want to, because of time, but I would like to touch a couple of things. So going right now to your work with the World Smart Cities Forum, which I would like you to explain to our audience what is the project, what you've been doing, and as well one part of that work, because you touched that. So for instance, like you said, the Western world has different ways to look at data that the Asia has, and Asia is much more centralized in the sense that the governments have much more authority to deal with this, and this is as well making the countries go faster. A lot of problems in Europe is that no one agrees with anything, and it's becoming a big problem, especially in Europe and even US and Canada. So how do you? So first of all, what is the World Smart Cities Forum? And second, a bit of this work that you've been, because working with so much different governments, it gives you a fantastic background as well, and potential a lot of different ways of managing your brain and dealing with all of them.
Well, the World Smart Cities Forum, I actually founded it last year because I needed some sort of a request by myself, because a lot of cities, I mean, leadership of the cities, municipalities, and central government, they are trying to do with the smart city project. But the thing is, major problem was, they don't have any goals and they don't have any KPIs. And that was the biggest problem, because you probably need to understand that most of the cities around the world, except for a few metropolitan cities, are poor. They are lack of money. They don't have enough money. And even, seemingly if they are rich enough, the thing is the leadership, like the mayors or governors, power to use up their budgets is very limited. So I think if they actually stay with the conventional way to make a decision to spend their own budget in the building of the smart city, not they call it smart city, but to me it's not smart city at all sometimes. So it's just like kind of routine budget spending. I'm trying to help them out what to do, and to try to help them out to establish the better KPIs. Then they can actually build up their own manifesto to appeal to people, and they can actually be admired by the people living in the city. So the World Smart Cities Forum's major role is trying to persuade cities and what they have to do from the beginning. So dealing with the basic master plan, about 3 to 5 months. Then also we just give them a heads up to how to collaborate with other cities and maybe doing something, because every small city can be a different, right? So, but we find out some mutual, I mean, the bilateral or multilateral small city projects, something in common. I mean, specifically, if the city is like really doing something like a specific one, and this cities as well, and we just combine them as a group. So we are actually initiating all different small city projects based on the mutual, achieving the mandate agreement from the city by signing. And then we are inviting the companies and creating the TechSandbox, and also trying to persuade other private sectors as well into the city. And we are also collecting lots of different data and cases around the world, and so we also share them with and throughout the conferences and meetups and everything. And ARK-i Labs is actually practical level, and ARK-i Labs design and implementation level master plan about a year. Also bring the investments and physical investment in this kind of project. And SPC is required because we're talking about PPP model. So PPP is, let's say, I don't think the government can afford to pay like 50%. So we're trying to minimize their risks. So I think maybe 20, 30% burdened by the city government, municipality, combining with the central government. And the majority of the fund, the finance is coming from the private sectors. But this kind of scheme and structure should be seemingly led by the private sectors rather than the government. And government to protect this kind of activities. But a lot of cases around the world before, by this time, and government trying to control everything. So, which is not good, because if the government is trying to control everything, there is no room for the private sectors, even though they invest a lot of money, and they're not actually anticipating any ROIs that's coming up, right? So if if you think about as a leadership of the municipality or state government, you have to embrace these activities of private sectors within their investments. So ease the regulation and ease the building of the strong policies to protect this small city projects from other threats. So this kind of combination work should be ready. And that is the ARK-i Labs does, together with World Smart Cities Forum. So World Smart Cities Forum is a London-based nonprofit organization. So the World Smart Cities Forum is not, the commercialized entities. It's trying to, spread out its missions and philosophy regarding the smart cities and also innovation. And ARK-i Labs is actually just like True Bullet, and they bring the contents and the companies, the TechSandbox and investment. And in the meantime, XnTREE their role is nurturing the startups focused. So changing the startups into the unicorn level companies throughout this kind of smart city projects around the world. So we're targeting about 1,000 startups should be nurtured in the next 5 years in Europe, in North America, and in Asia together. And hopefully we have about 50 companies will be unicorns. So if you lived in London, at the moment, every month there is one unicorn popped up in the ecosystem in London. So London is now achieved the biggest goals, making the entire London City as the platform of the innovation. So London Tech City initiative was really successful. Level 39 Open Tech Cluster was actually key, deliver and to bring a lot of innovators around the world. I visited Israel so many times. I mean, sometimes more than 25 times a year to scout the high level or high potential startups in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and somewhere. But these days, I don't go there because these startups has come to London because the money's right there and they don't have to be there. So I think that London changed the whole ecosystem in the past 6-7 years. And the reason why we are just anchoring here in New York as well, there's a lot of potential. I think COVID-19 can change these two cities very, very fast because they have their own bullets here. I mean, to support these cities in a way, but I think New York is much more conservative because of real estate and everything. It's very conventional industries. Comparing to London, New York is still a lot way to go. But I think COVID-19 triggered many people think differently. So probably after this COVID-19, hopefully this year, will be another hub of the smart city initiatives. Maybe let me give you one other examples, like Google Sidewalk Labs in Toronto was actually introduced many years ago. I mean, 3-4 years ago. It was the biggest hit in terms of the people who are actually dealing with the smart city projects. But now they are shutting it down. The problem actually happened because it's Google's like monopolistic approach. And the politicians are politicians. So politicians, they want to see something, one goals. And there was like no mutual zone to, collaborate and ongoing communication between public sectors and private sectors. So even a lot of people talk about PPP is the kind of, a promising point in the future, but still realistically, there is a biggest gap between public sectors and private sectors. So I think maybe if you want to make a small city project really successfully, they should be combined in a perfect way to be matching. It's not about the money. It's about something that the public sector can do best, and something that the private sectors can do best. It should be in a way of maybe new policies, new laws, and special laws or something. And even South Korea 2 years ago, the government established a new law, special law on smart city projects, but too general. It's not specific. It's still ongoing, but I think the leadership of the central government and municipality should be really open-minded, and also welcome to the private sector's the real activities they can actually welcome. That's the ARK-i Labs and World Smart Cities Forum really do at the moment.
Well, that's impressive. I like the ecosystem because it's really important, like you said, to look at the three parts of the ecosystem. So the last three questions, we are close to 1 hour. So the first one is you touched COVID-19, and COVID-19 has been an accelerator of digital transformation. It's been, of course, a massive machine to destroy the world with economic infrastructure, and especially the SMEs that are part of the cities. So which is still something that no one knows exactly. But how do you see this part of the COVID-19, bearing in mind that you're working with so much different cities, from New York to London to South Korea, which has different economical development as well, and of course Hanoi, which it was not so affected, but it's been affecting all the stuff. So how do you see this angle, and as well there's a way somehow to redesign society and cities, but as well the challenge that come out of this?
Well, I think the COVID-19 will be definitely a big challenge, because we are supposed to have the launching ceremony in Hanoi in March, but the COVID-19 just happened. So Vietnamese government shut it down. I mean, shut down their airports and ports and everywhere. And I think this kind of trend will go more. Here in New York City, the lockdown will continue by next month, even though they had made an announcement earlier that they will reopen the economy in May 15th or something, and even in London too. But I think the people around the world, they have to get used to living with the virus, because COVID-19 becomes COVID-20, and COVID-20 becomes 21. I think probably maybe we have to think about what are the major problems. Why the virus actually attack the human races these days? I think probably too many people living in this planet, and also the too much industrialized and pollutants. Even if you go to the Hanoi, I actually had 5 different topics in Hanoi Smart Cities, and first 2 topics was clean energy, and also the electric bike scooter systems, because construction sites and the scooters actually produce on a daily basis lots of pollutants, and they don't see the blue skies, probably maybe only a few times a month. So that is the killing point, that why we have to do something. We have to change the environment in the city. So COVID-19 will be kind of a trigger, as I mentioned, to another form of the smart city agenda. I think most of the cities around the world, in terms of metropolitan areas, they have to think about the safety issues for the people. And even though, the public transportations and, the food and everything is really abundant here in New York City and London, they can't help it. I mean, they cannot see the virus, right? So I think the COVID-19 can be the biggest problems at the moment during the people, like maybe the people trying to initiate the smart city project. But at the same time, it will be a biggest opportunity, because this can change the government and leaderships and bureaucrats. And I think also it changed the whole mindset of the businesses. They actually really happy with their own businesses before. Like, for example, here in New York City, you see a lot of the skyscrapers here. It's all empty. My office in this Midtown, all empty. 1139 is empty. So most of the space is empty. We're talking about WeWork. What's the business model for the future? WeWork. Nobody knows, right? So this COVID-19 could change everything, like mentality, the way of living and customs and the culture. And this, I think probably the people in this planet should, adapt this kind of the changed environment. But this is actually early stage of the change. So some people talking about fourth industrial revolution, right? But I think the coronavirus, COVID-19, can be another, the big form of the fourth industrial revolution. So first industrial revolution hasn't come yet. I think this change of the COVID-19 will be another biggest form of fourth industrial revolution. I think after this, you will see a different, I'm not talking about the shape of the cities, I'm talking about invisible side of the people and infrastructure. That will be way, way different now.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's a kind of a new for AR. So it's interesting. So probably the last questions that I want to touch that. So how do you see, and I think going more, I think you touched some areas very interesting, especially the areas of the relationship between public, private, and the ecosystems where people live. And I think that is very important to touch. And I would like to see, from your experience, both working in places like Level 49 and then as well in different countries, how do you see this kind of, like, from your insight and your experience, the future of work, okay, and the main trends that come out of this? Because I think that's a very important thing to define someone like you with your experience.
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll repeat. So how do you see right now? You touch a bit some of these things, but the future of work, because bearing in mind, like you said, that each smart city or each city has to come up with an ecosystem to empower people to live and create that. And you just mentioned, for instance, WeWork, that doesn't make sense anymore because people right now, if people can work from home, at least most of them now, this will make a big change because a lot of cities were created under creating, for instance, I've been working in Kuala Lumpur, and the center of Kuala Lumpur is empty as well. Not the center, but a lot of the buildings, and it's a big challenge. So how do you see this in terms of future of work and as well future of cities? Because this is a big challenge right now.
Right. I think there maybe it will be dramatically changed. Even I just had my all the employees work from home, and I think the form of the employment will be also changed. So there will be no full time, no such a kind of part time. I think probably maybe based on projects, and also it's a lot of people, they now think in different way. Why do I actually have to live in the city? And even they don't want to take the subway systems and buses, and because that's scary space. It's like a closed space. And even the spaces like offices, I think probably the major companies, the leadership might think about how they actually just set up the new rules and to allocate people one time, or maybe they have to just separate all the employees in different places. And in that way, I think the globalizations now is really begun, because all the globalization was not really happening before. I think in offline activities is much more stronger. So it's not about offline, it's not about online. There will be a kind of the mutual, connected on offline will be kind of real deal from now. And yeah, and I think probably, let's say the people commute every day, you don't see that much. So probably maybe the traffic jam will be maybe changed. That's kind of the natural solve the problems. But at the same time, the living conditions and pursuit of happiness for individual, and how to achieve the biggest business profits, maximize the profits for the business perspective. I think the concept will be changed as well. So that's why the smart city project initiatives are very important. Then because that initiatives also bring a lot of attention from the private sectors, because they are actually going through the unprecedented time they're actually living in right now. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, last, and then I want to just highlight where people can find you. So what would you say for leaders around the world, and leaders both of cities, both of governments, and both of companies? Because there's still a lot of mythics and a lot of questions around what is the definition of smart city, the lack of digital transformation, the lack of different things. So what would be your pragmatic advice for the people listening to us around the world and that want as well to contact and connect with you with the Smart Cities
Yeah,
Forum?
they can connect. Also, we are running the website, and we're still ongoing this stuff right now. They can also visit our website, worldsmartcities.org. I think the most of the upcoming contents and also the cases, will upload them there, so they can get access to some of the project we have already done, and some of the upcoming project we are going to do. And also we communicate with the leadership and industries. And for example, we started with the TechSandbox in Hanoi, Vietnam Smart City a few weeks ago. So we are thinking about sharing that TechSandbox with the global leaders around the world.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that's a good point to wrap up. I think, well, there's been 1 hour of excellent insights. And I think for everyone looking at smart cities, there's a lot of things here. So there's the website, World Smart Cities Forum. There's the ARK-i Labs. I read it, ARK-i Labs, and XnTREE, which we'll put all of this on the bio. So last words for, especially for leaders and the universities. You didn't touch much the education, but I would like to hear your views on the public sector. And there's just the last part of the education. How do you see that part?
Yeah, that's a very important thing. I think maybe that's very the important components that support smart city activities throughout, the collaborations between private sectors, industries, for example, and the governments, like public sector, and also academia. So we're still collaborating with many different academia around the world at the moment. So in London, we are working together with UCL. And in South Korea, we work with the Seoul National University, which is the largest university in South Korea. And here in the United States, we are about to collaborate with the Columbia or maybe some other universities, because the young generations and future unicorns, they are still at school, and we're trying to give them the better insights and to share our insights with them, and also collaborating with R&Ds and professors, and to motivate them to get them involved in better smart city projects around.
So one last question that I want to talk. So when I look at the World Smart Cities Forum, and you have the blueprint for future cities, you have the components of energy, property, cross-validation, innovation and technology, mobility, water and waste, circular economy, living and security. Yeah. Do you want to just, as a final summary, give a bit of an overview about all these different items?
Well, those are the actually most important items at the moment, because we cannot deal with many, more than 100 projects at the moment. So we're targeting these things because just along with the the coronavirus like COVID-19. I think maybe these items are the keys to support and how to deal with the problems in this planet, and also the major cities. So I think we start from the metropolitan cities first. So because the people here and broadcasting companies here and the media is here, everybody's here in metropolitan cities. So I think this is good examples we can create, collaborating with the city government and leaderships. And then we can spread out to the smaller size of the cities. And I'm thinking about also, this is one of the process at the moment. We are thinking about New York, London, Rotterdam in Netherlands as a triangle smart city cross-validation project at the moment in the Western countries and other countries in Asia altogether. So we're just grouping some of the big cities and try to pull out with the amazing the cases based on the activities. And that is actually our goals. So that's why we're just still communicating with the leadership of the local governments.
Okay, well, I think we could go for a lot of different things, but it's been a fantastic exchange. It's really impressive, and I want to congratulate you for the excellent work. And as well, like you said, there's a lot of opportunities, but a lot of challenges as well. So I would like to thank you and as well congratulate for this fantastic work. And I hope we can all learn more from you and looking at the three projects that we have, especially the World Smart Cities Forum, the ARK-i Labs, and the XnTREE, which we will be highlighting in your profile. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.